shortly. We're just going to give it a minute or two to allow more people to join us.
Joining us. So as Anne-Marie said, we do have a full schedule. And if you do have questions throughout my presentation that we have our time together, just put it in the chat. If there's anything, reach out afterwards. It will be my pleasure. I also lead the public speaking group. So I'm not sure everyone here is in the group or not. If you're not, you should be part of the group because really it's the best group to be part of. Let's be honest here. And so if you have any questions or any comments after, reach out. It will be my pleasure. So if everyone's ready, I will share my screen. Does everyone see? I have Tom,
Yes.
David, and Michelle. Thank you. I'm going on you right now to make sure that if there's anything, just let me know. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about how to use psycholinguistics to stand out and get notes. So Anne-Marie introduced me. My name is Sarah Gilbert. I'm a business strategist and mindset coach. So I am a speaker and I'm also a coach. So I do both. I have one-on-one coaching and different programs that I offer in groups, and I do speaking engagements. I am an entrepreneur. So my really focus is being a strategist for entrepreneurs and leaders, and I'm a human behavior geek. So if you like geeking out on human behavior, we are going to have a blast together. If you don't like geeking out on human behavior, we are still going to have a blast together today. No problem, you know? So let's get started. Let's start by the beginning. And I like to rewind a bit because we've all done this. When I started my career as a speaker, in the speaking, I shared a lot of information. Everything that I shared was a lot of insight, a lot of information, a lot of graphs, a lot of studies. I was the queen of Excel. I'm still the queen of Excel, but I was the queen of Excel. And I shared a lot of information. And I did that in my coaching clients, with my coaching clients, and I did the same with my speaking engagement. Like it was really heavy in terms of information and data that I was sharing. And I remember one day I was with a client and we're talking about their strategy of their business. And you end a meeting and you're like, the client's like, wow, this is great. This is exactly what we're going to do in terms of strategy for our visibility for our business. It's perfect. This is exactly what we needed, which all the comments that we love hearing. But the thing is, it was the third time we were having the same meeting. So this is where I figured there's something that I'm not getting. So I went back and got my double certification in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And this is to better understand human behavior. And within there's a small branch, small subsection of NLP, which is about language. And that's really where I fell in love with psycholinguistics. So what is psycholinguistics? It's to understand the link between language and human behavior. It's about understanding how the words that we use, how we structure our sentences, even the verbs of the tense of the verbs that we use, how that influences behavior. It's even good in spoken language and also in written language, and it's not something new. It's an old science that we are now applying with greater intention in the business world. So as speakers, we want to understand how the words that we use influence our audience. How do we want to structure our talks so it connects better and with more people? And what do we want to pay attention to? So I've designed a strategic, a communication framework where really breaking down all the different pillars of a strategic communication and how we use communication. Now, when we talk about communication, we often think about the third step, the words that we're going to use, how are we going to use storytelling. But when we don't have the fundamentals, the right word said at the wrong time, or the wrong word said to the wrong person won't give us the impact that we want to make. So today we're really going to focus on the pillars, the fundamentals of communication so we can have a greater impact. We want to have the right sentence to the right person at the right time to be able to have the impact that we want to have. So how does communication work? And there's really key elements that we want to understand. And that's what we're going to dig in today. The first thing that we want to gain clarity is the importance of emotion, the role of emotions in our communication. So Abraham Hicks gave us the scale of emotions. Every day, we are navigating through this scale of emotions every day, all the time. Now, we want to understand that when emotions are high, irrational intelligence is low, because that influences how I'm going to be able to impact somebody who is very high emotionally right now. It doesn't have the logic to grab the information that I want to give them, get
Did you
the
get my text?
insight that we want to give them.
No, that I met Isabella.
There's one person whose mic is open.
I took care of it, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne-Marie. So when emotions are high, irrational intelligence is low. I say rational intelligence, not people are not intelligent. It's that reason isn't there. So when we are in that, understanding that we are navigating that scale all the time. So if our audience is, and I really, let's go to the deepest of the emotions, people are in grief or in fear because of the economy, the recession, whatever. When we show up with our optimism, we can connect. Even if we want to give them the tools that are going to help them and give them insight, and we come up with like motivation and we can do this, and the emotional gap is too far between where we are and where the other person is. So our first role here, understanding emotion, is we want to reduce the emotional gap between where we are and where our audience is. So we don't want to go and meet them wherever they are emotionally, but we just want to reduce the emotion. And there's two particular emotions that I call pivot emotion, and there's doubt and hope. They're pivot emotion because doubt takes the person out of the downward spiral of the negative emotions, and hope pivots them into what could be possible. Now, in terms of linguistic, how do we create doubt and how do we create hope? And this is where the what if questions kicks in. What if I told you that there was a different way of looking at this? What if they told you that there's a solution, that's a potential solution that could give you this? What if I told you that that is possible? What you want is possible. Linguistically, what ifs takes people who are in the negative emotion, doubts that something else is different. And people who are higher in the emotional scale actually brings them even higher in terms of hopes and dreams and aspirations. So it's a small structure of sentence, but can open up such a floodgate of creativity, innovation, potentiality. We're just starting our questions with, what if? So Harvard did a study demonstrating that 95% of our decisions are based on emotions. So every day, the only thing that we're seeking as human is an emotion. If that didn't exist, the luxury industry wouldn't exist. So we're always seeking an emotion. What is the emotion that your audience is seeking? How can I bring somebody who's in the down world into doubt, into hope? And that's what we're going to go and get. So we tend to give a lot of information, but humans make decisions not on logic. We think we're rational, but we're not rational. We're actually just seeking an emotion all the time. So in our talks, when we tend to give a lot of information, we stay in the rational. So we want to be able to identify what does our audience want more of and what do they want less of, And because it's those two pillars that actually bring people into action. It's easy to stay into the intellect, but people don't move because when we're in our head, we don't take any action. That's a comfort zone. So we want to bring an emotion of what does my audience want more of? What do they want less of? And how do I navigate those to be able to bring doubt and hope? And from there, I can bring in intellect because there's still a 5% of our decision-making process that is reason. That is how we anchor a decision. But first, we need to get the emotion up and to be able to, after that, anchor this. So what are the emotions that my audience is looking at? And I love this quote by Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek says, Martin Luther King gave the I have a dream speech, not I have a plan speech. That is the power of psycholinguistics. That one word changes everything because a dream has an emotion in it. A plan has only logic. We don't move people from logic. So the way that we distribute information, that we share information, if it's just intellectually, it doesn't move people, it doesn't make people take action, and we don't get to have to make the impact that we actually want to make when people are just in their head. So there's 3 things that influence a message. So it's not as much as what I say. What we want to understand is what does the other person hear and understand. So between what I say and what the other person understands, there's 3 things, the 3 key pillars that influence that: the brain, the life experience, and the personality. So let's start with our brain. So there's 3 ways that the brain transforms a message. The first is omission. So the brain will take only 5 pieces of information, plus or minus 2, and then just forget the rest. So when we are on stage and we're sharing information for 45, 60, 90 minutes, our audience will only take 7 pieces of information and will just forget the rest. Their brain will actually filter what they're going to take. The second thing that the brain will go and do to transform the message is make a generalization. So the brain takes 20% of our energy, and the brain's there to get us to survive, not to reach our full potential. It's focused on survival. So it will make a generalization to come up to a conclusion. That's like when we were kids, we figured that a door, I push or pull on that thing and it opens. We didn't have to do 25. After 5 examples of something, the brain starts to make a generalization. And sidetrack, this is why on our website, we want to at least have 5 testimonials, because from there, that's where the brain starts making a generalization. But these are sentences like always, never. That's a generalization that we make. And the third thing that the brain will go and do is a distortion. It will actually just create an imaginary story of what happened. So we've all had conversation with people and we say, well, that is what we agreed upon. And the person's like, no, that's not at all how things happen. And you're like, well, that's how I remember it. So between how I remember something and how you remember something, there's my way, your way, and the truth. So this is where the brain will actually transform messages. Now, that's nice. What we really want to know, because I'm not a fluff person, I like actions. How do we want to use this? In our talks, how do we want to make sure that our audience leaves with the insight that we want them to leave? And I use these even when one-on-one meeting with clients. So in a mission, the 3 things I want you to leave with today are 1, 2, and 3. That is how we want to finish our talk, because there's key insight that you want to bring. So out of the 60 minutes that you spoke, there's 3 things that you want them to remember. At the end of the day, of the talk, that's how we want to make sure that they leave with the right thing. We want to address the generalization. Sometimes we think that all of this happened or never things happen. And we want to break down some of the generalization that people do regarding the topic that we're covering. We know how people generalize our content. So we want to actually address that and unpack and sometimes undo generalization. And distortion is, again, we want to address all of that proactively. You could be thinking that, you could be seeing that. Some people could think that this is that's how it happens. So any distortions that you feel that people can make throughout our talks, we want to bring them in there. So personally, even on a one-on-one basis that I finished every one of my meeting is, what are your key takeaways from our call today? So I know exactly what their brain is doing. Now on a one-on-one basis, we can ask that question, but when we're doing a talk, we actually want to address that within our talk because we know it's going to happen anyways. The second thing that influences our message is the person's life experience. So their orientation of how they see the world. There's 3 fears every human have regarding change. And think of any change right now that you're trying to make and that you want to bring in your life. And you're going to see that one of these 3 changes, or more than one, actually applies. So the first fear that the human have is that I will lose something. Even if it's not something that I want, losing my comfort zone, what I know, is actually a fear that we have as humans. So if you're bringing change, if you're bringing insight, new information, and you're creating change with your talks, that is going to influence the fear of loss. The second change is the process. The idea that you're bringing is going to be complicated. Why don't people change a cell phone company or banks? That is the fear number 1. The process is going to be complicated. And the third fear regarding change is the status quo. Is I will follow your recommendation, I will do what you suggested me to do, but it's nothing, it's going to be the same thing. It's apples for apples. So again, in our talks, we want to proactively address these fears. And the reason also we want to proactively address them is because if you don't, our audience, they go in their inner chatter and they're actually stuck in those stories. Yes, but I'm going to lose this if I bring in your insight. Yeah, but that's going to be complicated to do what you want. And as soon as somebody turns their conversation, now they're in your chatter, they're not our audience anymore because they're their own audience. So in our talks, how do we want to address this? This will bring you, it will allow you, you will gain. What will people gain with using your ideas, your insight, the information that you're sharing? What will they gain out of that? Address the process, the 3 steps to do this. The process to get this done is, I always pretty much end on, and this is the process. Step 1, we do this. Step 2, we do this. Step 3, we do this. So create the process so that people don't mentally have to do it, because the brain is just there to save energy, not to create the process of how are you going to implement what you're suggesting. And the status quo is, after this is how your life will be. It will be simpler. It will be this. It will be that. Paint the picture how life after will be. Does that make sense up to now? Good. Perfect. I'm going on Tom, David, and Alejandro. That's where our gentlemen are the first 3 on my screen right now. The third thing that influences our message is the personality, our unique traits. So in language, there's different linguistic models. So we want to first understand what is our linguistic model. Because if I have one specific linguistic model and you have a different one, it's like me speaking in French and you speaking in English. We don't understand each other. We might be speaking the same language, but it's not in the same linguistic model. And when we don't speak the same linguistic model, people's perception is you don't know me. We're not the same. So if we're not the same, you don't know me, how can your suggestion be the best thing for me? So we're going to see one of the linguistic models together, and because I find that is the simplest ones to understand. And we want for first one bring self-awareness, and then we want to change our talk according to that. So the one that I want to bring today is the orientation of the motivation. So repeat, there are some people who are moving towards. They're moving towards a goal, towards change. They're looking for outcome. And there are people who are moving away. These are just linguistic models. That's it. There's not one that's better for the other. It doesn't matter. So in business, I'm a very moving towards person. And I remember I used to have a client and she was a very moving away. So, and until I realized that there's a disconnect, there was no communication between us. So what does this look like? If I'm in money management, I'll hear some people say, I want to get rich. And I will see some people say, I want to have stop money problem. The money management strategy will stay the same. The way that I position the message will be different depending of who I have. If I work on weight management, some people will say, I want to become thin, and some people will say, I want to lose my curves. The plan will be the same. And even if I sell mattresses, some people are going to say, I want to sleep like a baby. And some people are going to say, I want to have to stop insomnia. I will sell them the same mattress, but I will position what I say according to how the person is. It's simple and it's not complicated. It's the same thing. It's just positioned differently. So here first is understanding what your orientation in linguistic is like. If you tend to be a more towards person, there's chances are that your communication is that way, your brochure is that way, your website is that way, the social media posts that you do are that way. The same as if you're moving away. So what do we want in our talks? Is we want to have a 50-50 split. So you want to have because in the population, it's about a 50-50 split. So you want to have half of your talk as in moving towards this strategy, this idea gets us to do this, gets us to reach this, and the other part, another 50% of, and we will have less of this. And you will have less of that. It's simple and it's not complicated. It's the same thing. It's just linguistically, it's reaching more people. So here, I'm putting it into our talk, but have a look at your website too. Do you have a 50-50? Or is your website and your brochure and the way that you communicate just one way? Think of the people that you have the easy flow of communication. Chances are you have the same orientation of the motivation. And the people that you're having the hardest time to speak with is because they're a different type. So my client with whom communication didn't flow until I understood this is because I was in one way and that person is the other way. So if I change my communication pattern so she can understand me. So I changed my communication from a moving towards to a moving away. I entered her world, spoke her language, and that is how I got her to move. So understand yours, and then will be able to understand the language of the other people who are around us. And again, just look at the conversations that you currently have. You'll notice it right away. So I said psycholinguistic is about understanding the words and the link between the words and human behavior. So we understand that even if I have a good sentence, but if I'm saying it in moving towards to somebody who are moving away, the communication won't work. I understand that there's filters that are happening between what I say and the other person that understands. These are all subconscious things. We don't realize it. But now we are aware of it. So we want to structure our sentences leveraging that insight so we can connect with our audience better. Which brings us to the point of the power of intentionality. Choosing the right words. So there's a really, really good book that's called The Immunity to Change, which I will recap in one slide. It's a good book. It's an intense book. But I'll reduce it. We tend to want to change behavior. So to change behavior, we tell people these are the actions that they need to take. But what's really impacting behavior is belief and fear. So our role as speakers is to make the invisible visible. So the greatest fear that we have as human is not the fear of death. We all know what we're afraid of regarding to death is we're afraid of how and when. That's what we're afraid of, but everyone here knows that we're going to die at one point. The greatest fear is rejection. So and according to rejection, I have beliefs of how I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to act, so I'm supposed to think, behave. So what we want to do is make everything that is invisible in my blind spots visible. Because once I'm aware of the beliefs that I'm hiding, even from myself, then I can do something about it. When we change belief, we change behavior, we change results. But we tend to focus on giving information on behavior and action, forgetting that it's really the beliefs and the fear that are driving the whole thing. Coming back to the slide we had before of what are the three biggest fears regarding change, we have fear about a whole bunch of things. So our role is, what are the fears and how can I take them from the invisible world to the visible world? And again, here linguistically is you might be thinking. You might be saying to yourself, and then you address the fear. When we know our audience, we know their fears. And the conversation, the most important conversation that anybody has is the conversations that we have with ourselves. So you might be thinking and you might be saying to yourself, and then you bring the light on what are the fears and what are the beliefs that they have. So I'll give you a concrete example. I had a client, not in speaking, but in coaching, and you see how we can use it leveragely. I had a client who wanted to have a YouTube channel and about, doing videos and whatnot. I could have spent hours on the studio, how to record, how to do the script and whatever. But her belief was that she needed to be perfect. Because if she wasn't perfect, she would have been judged. If she's judged, she's being rejected. And on a brain perspective, being rejected is being kicked out of your tribe, and which means you might be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That's how the brain works. So by addressing the fear and the belief, then I was able to change the belief or shed light on the belief so we can challenge the belief. We'll challenge the action and the behavior. So we want to bring things at the right place in our talks. Whatever is invisible, bring it to light. You might be thinking to yourself, you might be saying to yourself. If you're in a smaller group and you're doing a workshop, you can actually turn this into question. What do you think? What do you think about it? What do you think about this? What are the things that you tell yourself regarding this? And people will tell you what their beliefs and what their fears are. And that is really, once we get that out of the way, then we can do magic. But that is really what's running the show, is what's invisible, the underworld. There was an interesting study that was where they asked participants how fast were the cars going just before. Okay, and they gave them options of different words: smash, collided, bumped, hit, contacted. And depending on the word that they used in the sentence, people evaluated the speed of the two cars completely differently. So there's an emotion that we attach to different words. There's a definition that we attach to the different words. This is why we want to be very intentional with the words that we use, because people attach a meaning and it's not necessarily our meaning. People attach an emotion and it's not necessarily our emotion. So if there's words where you have a good definition, a positive definition, does everyone else in the audience do? And that's where we want to reframe some of our words. So I call this the emotional vocabulary. So give you an example. For me, the words discipline and structure, they mean freedom. But for many people, entrepreneurs and leaders, discipline and structure is like you're going to be taking away our freedom. So what are the words that you use where we attach a different word, different emotions to them? So we can think about cost versus investments, crisis versus uncertainty. There's a reason why in the media the word crisis is being used, is because it's emotionally way more charged than uncertainty. Contracts versus engagements. I don't have contracts, I just have engagement. So what are the words that you use? What is the emotion that you attach? And then flip it around, saying, okay, what other emotion could be attached to it? And then we have different options. Either I choose a different word, or I give the definition of the word so we can speak the same language. So again, going back to the word discipline, taking the time to explain what does this discipline mean for me will make sure that we attach the same emotion. Because if I have a positive emotion to the word and you have a negative emotion to the word, you won't be listening to me. You're going to be back in your inner chatter and saying, yeah, but I don't want that. Think of things like budget. When my financial planner says the word budget, I'd rather go for a root canal. He's got a really positive emotion attached to the word budget, but I don't. So if we want to have a communication and we want to have an impact, we want to make sure that our emotional vocabulary is the same. So we attach the same emotion to a word. So again, either I change the word or I frame the word with what does it mean for me. We're good? Good. Thank you, Don. So in the words that we use, we could have gone an entire library of words. So I picked different ones here. The power of the word because. As humans, we resist change. Humans do not fundamentally like to change because our nervous system likes what is familiar, what is known, not what is unknown. So fundamentally, we don't like, but when we speak, the word because gives us a reason why to change. It gives us an explanation of why I should change, why I should consider your idea, why I should be listening to you. And this is a pattern, a framework that the brain uses all the time. If then. And the way linguistically that we use that is the word because. So if you came here today, it's because you want to have a greater impact. So consciously or unconsciously, you told yourself, if I go to this meeting today, then I'll have a greater impact. If I come to this meeting today, maybe I'll know what psycholinguistic means. There was an if then that got you here today. When we do talks, we want to create the if then relationship for our audience. So this can be when we want to do it when we do our proposal. We want to do it when we write the description of our talk. Throughout the talk, we want to help our audience make that link all the time. So if you bring many points up in your talk, many information, insight, studies, whatever, we want to make that if then relationship for the brain on people. That's how they understand, oh, if I use that insight, if I do this, if I take their suggestion, then I will get that result. So the word because is the one that helps us linguistically of say, when we do this, because that is what is going to help us achieve this. Because that is what is going to allow us to have less of this. So the word because is a magical, because it makes a relationship cause effect. And the brain is always looking for, why am I doing this? Why am I listening? Why should I do this? Why could I do this? So the word because is a magical word to help us make that link between the two. And now if we tap into the three most powerful words that we can use. Okay? And again, we want to use this in our talks. We can use them in our emails, in our communication. And the first word is imagine. What happens with the word imagine is I take people from the critical brain, the rational brain, the logical brain, where all the excuses reside, and we bring them in the creative part of their brain, where everything is possible. So imagine this. I'm doing a talk and then I bring people into my conversation. Imagine if we achieve this. This is where we enter their goals, their dreams, their aspirations. And whenever we are on a brain perspective that we use the word imagine, the prefrontal cortex actually comes down because the brain just says, oh, they're just saying a story. It doesn't really matter. It's just a story. It's a Peter Pan thing. I can go to rest. And then we're able to bring them where we want to bring them. So imagine if there was a way that we could do this. Imagine if we did this. Imagine if we'd achieve this. So it's a magical word to bring people and get them out of their judgmental thinking all the time and bring them into the world of possibilities. So I often say there's two worlds. There's a world of probability, where action, reaction, everything is secure, and the world of possibilities, where everything is possible. Our job is to bring them in that world, because that is the only world where we're going to be able to have an impact and make a difference. And the world imagine actually helps us enter that world. The second one is the name of people. Our name is the sweetest sound. And there was another study that was done that 97% of people, when they try a pen for the first time, they write their names. Think of the last time you bought pens, the first thing that you did, okay, sometimes we'll gribble, but then we'll actually write our names. So our name is actually the sweetest sound for our ears. Now, when I'm on a one-on-one basis, it's easy to use the person's name. But what if you're doing a talk? Here's the hint. You look at what are the most popular name in that country, in the generation of your audience, and you use those names. Because there's a high probability that you have more people in the audience that have those names. So if I know that I'm going to be in Canada and the average audience that are going to be 50 years old are different names than if I'm in Canada and I have an audience of 20-year-olds. So how can I leverage people's name? And when we're saying that psycholinguistic is in spoken and in written, now in your emails, not just at the beginning, say, hi, Suzanne, and with it too. Thank you, Suzanne. It was really great speaking with you today. And on that note, Suzanne, if there's anything, let me know. We start and we end with the person's name. That is how we bring that they feel that they're seen. Because as humans, what we need and what we're all seeking is to be seen, known, and recognized. Seen, heard, and recognized. That's what we're looking for. So that is why for us, using people's names in our talks has such a great impact. And the word together. we are tribes. We are always, when we are with our tribe, there's safety in number. And together brings that safety. So what we want is bringing that safety, because if there's no safety, there is no change. So linguistically is, well, this is exactly what we're going to do together. When we do this, we get this. So how can we bring the emotion of togetherness into our talks? It's linguistically. Because if I feel safe, then I will change. But if I don't feel safe, I won't change. That is why that teams or businesses where where there is no innovation is because people don't feel safe. So we can bring that linguistically in terms of safety, and we will do it in terms of body language as well, with our hands, on how to get people to feel safe. So the three most powerful words: imagine. Now you don't want to be always using imagine this, imagine that. So I've created, a language that, okay, what are the same words that have different words that have the same emotions in an ideal world? Let's play a game. Let's pretend. These are other ways linguistically that I can access that same part of the brain, of the creative part of the brain. So you can create that emotion different ways throughout your talk without always using the same word. Because when we overuse a word, the word actually loses its impact and its magic. So we want to play around of like, okay, well, in an ideal world, we could do this, we could do that, and then we can brainstorm with our audience on what could be possible. Because we know that fun is the doorway to creativity and innovation. So we want to bring into that world. The togetherness. Again, I want to say togetherness, but us, we, our. Even when we're on stage, we talk about our clients, meaning their clients. But if I want to convey the meaning and the emotion of togetherness, they're our clients. So imagine that we do this with our clients. Let's play a game. Let's say that we do this now with our clients, for our clients. How would that feel? So now I'm bringing imagination and togetherness within the same sentence. And then we can add the name of people. So in an ideal world, the Joneses, when they call us, what we answer and what we start doing now is this, this, and this. So in the same sentence, I have these three most powerful words, and then I will tack on to that, because this is how we enter what is the transformation that we want to offer. So linguistic has a lot of power for our clients in the talk and how we structure our sentences. And it gives them a different perspective, because we all have our point of view, our view of the world. When we are intentional of how we use language, when we're intentional of understanding where people are emotionally, when we understand that between what I say and what the person understands and what the person hears and understands, there's different things that will happen, that will change, that will actually impact the message and transform the message. Now, when we construct our talks with a greater intentionality, we give them the gift of new perspective, which brings in the gift of transformation, impact, and for us, contribution. So we've all seen this stat because we all share it, but sometimes we forget it, that 85% of our success is linked to our ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. 15% is our technical knowledge. So we put a lot of emphasis on our knowledge when that's not what has the greatest impact, is how we communicate. So now our reality now is, our responsibility now is, okay, what's influencing a message? What are my linguistic patterns? What are some of the words that I use? What words could I use now? to have a greater impact and a greater influence on my audience and the people that I actually want to make a difference with. So now with this, it's your turn to play. So have fun with these concepts. Bring awareness of how do you speak? What words do you use? What could you use starting from now? And let's all make a difference because that's really what we're here for. So Anne-Marie will open it up for questions. We have questions or comments. Do you want me to stop sharing?
Let's just maybe leave it up for 1 minute, just if anybody wants to grab your contact info. We do have a couple of minutes before we are going to close off the event. If anybody has a question for Sarah, feel free to post it in the chat, or you can raise your virtual hand or unmute yourself, whatever you would like.
Yes, this was wonderful. I literally just did I did a speaking engagement, panel discussion 2 days ago at the Alt Summit in Palm Springs, and working on, continuing to speak. And I have like my first keynote this summer, and these things are so phenomenal. So I just want to say thank you for this space. Thank you for these types of like gems you're dropping. I'm gonna show you what I look like, but I'm not dressed all the way. So here we go.
My screen, that's why I'm like, shit, I can't find her. Okay.
Yes, here I am.
Go.
If there's a way we can get a copy of the PowerPoint, I know that we're also going to get this pre-recorded on demand, but if we can get that, and then also I would love to chat maybe off on maybe coaching or maybe proofing my first keynote or whatever services you have. I don't know if that's part of the council, but just would love to definitely stay connected.
Well, you know what? Zing me an email. I'll put my email in the chat. I was going to ask Anne-Marie if it's okay, but it's kind of, if I say it, it has to be okay. So here, I'll put my email in the chat. Just email me and I'll send you a copy of the presentation. It's my pleasure. Obviously, the only thing that I ask is, first, don't use it. Don't share it, and that's it. But, well, hold on, I'm trying to write my email here.
I've also just posted in the chat, Danielle, if you want to connect on the Forbes platform, there is the public speaking group as well too. So you can always connect with Sarah there.
Yes.
Perfect. I'm in
and
that.
Sarah, it is Sarah.Gilbert, right? Because I think,
yes,
there we go.
Take two is better. It's better with a good email address, but yes. And there's so many things that we can play with in language, but just taking the time to take the time and stepping back and saying, okay, well, what happens between what I say and what the other person says? And how can I bring greater intention in there so I can have a greater impact? I hope everyone just got the if then I just did right there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We do have someone has their hand up. Deora?
Dora, yes, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really just want to, applaud, Sarah, for such a fantastic presentation. I am going to connect with you. I am going to join the public speaking group. I am a professional coach, and I typically use words like, what if you knew? But I never really recognized how powerful that was. So today has really just, solidified a lot of, things that I might have been using, but not recognized how powerful they were. And the aspect of words being powerful building blocks to sentences and to paragraphs and so on. So thank you for this. I really look forward to connecting with you and being part of the group. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And so somebody says this is the foundation of Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is also an NLP coach, fundamentally. And this and what if you knew? Because often in language, we say, if people say, well, you ask them a question and they say, I don't know. You say, well, what if you didn't know? The first time I tried that, the person said, well, if I didn't know, I'd tell you. And I'm like, oh, okay. So the follow-up to that is, and what would you tell me? And when we are speaking, we want to be intentional about the possible of question, because if the person is in their head and they go, well, if I would know, I would tell you, they're not our audience anymore. They're back in their head and conversation is over. So yes, and we could have spoken a lot about questions also, because when you ask a question, the brain can't do anything but answer that question. Well, we tend to add to ask pretty poor questions. So there's a difference between a good question, because when I ask a question, I get an answer, but when I ask an excellent question, I get the truth. So understanding that dynamic between the difference.
Sarah, there is a question in the chat. Any recommendations on words that are compelling for call to actions on websites?
You know what? I like words, especially for call to actions, that actually activate the identity. So the highest level of transformation is on purpose. The second is an identity. Like, yes, I'm ready. That I am saying that my identity is somebody who's ready. So I have 3 programs. They're called Invincible, Impactful, and Unshakable. And the reason why I chose those words for the programs that I run is because there are 3 words relating to the identity. So call to action is, can you create call to actions that activate, that create and or activate an identity? Yes, I'm that kind of person. Yes, I'm ready. And not just book now. Because that's an action, it's not an identity. So look into call to actions that are creating that are in link with the identity that you want people to embrace. That would be the.
Thank you, Sarah. We do have another question from Savannah. She says, where did you take your NLP course and did you like it?
Well, I'm in Montreal. I loved it, yet I don't do NLP. I don't do NLP interventions. I don't do the part that I picked up really. So NLP is pretty general. Some people from there will stick to NLP. Some people will go into body language. Mine was really like, because I'm auditory, I went with psycholinguistic and I really went all out on that. So I just study language. I study, in language, there's verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal. So paraverbal is the intonation of the voice that we use. So how do I end my sentences will have an impact. How I will space out. So I did a podcast yesterday, and the guy who was recording it goes, it's just unbelievable. It goes, when you like say a sentence that's like drop the mic sentence, you give it a pause. And when we speak is understanding also the power in those pauses. Because magic happens in that space. So
Go ahead, Savannah. I think she has
yes, Savannah. Oh,
her hand.
maybe
is
that was
up.
a clap. Our hand, Savannah, your hand's up, but maybe that was a clap. Okay, I'll take it as
Or
a high five.
No, sorry,
Okay,
my
high
mic was
five.
acting up.
There
I was
we go.
talking. I was
Yep.
saying, are there any classes, if it's psycholinguistics, then are there any classes that you recommend that would be good if somebody wanted to learn more about psycholinguistics?
I probably wouldn't go in NLP directly. Hypnosis, actually, you play around more with words and language in hypnosis.
Okay.
And seriously, you can follow me on social media because I'm always talking about language and how when people tell, like when a client say, I'd like to, what they're really saying is, I doubt my capability of doing. There's so many so hypnosis would probably be more a play on language than NLP itself.
Okay, thank you.
It's an entire universe in there.
Amazing. Well, if there are no other questions, I am going to wrap this up. I want to thank you, Sarah. This was, if you haven't seen the comments in the chat, an amazing session. People have loved it. Positive comments all around. Great presentation. We will be posting the recording on the Forbes platform within 24 to 72 hours. Thank you for the presentation today, Sarah. Thank you to all of you who joined us. Our next Forbes Coaches Council event will be on March the 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope to see you all then. I've put the link in the chat. If you haven't already registered, please do so. And I want to officially thank you all for joining us today and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye. Thanks, Ed.